Washington mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
8:07 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson with
Morning.
you. We've got Senator Rob Portman coming up in about a half hour from now. Talk to him at 8:36. Tucker Carlson. I've had a tough day with names today. Tucker Carlson from the Daily Caller is on the line. Good morning, Tucker.
Hey, it's those complicated Scandinavian names.
Yeah.
Volvo, Saab, Carlson.
Right.
They get even me.
Yeah, Paul Ryan and Ron Paul and Rand Paul have tripped me up all morning long.
See, those are my kind of names.
Yeah.
The monosyllabic names. That's why those guys have gone far.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that the word monosyllabic is not monosyllabic?
It's not automatopoetic, I guess is what you're saying.
It's always important, by the way, in broadcasting to put the right emphasis on the right syllable.
Is that right?
Yes.
Exactly.
So
just a little bit of broadcasting wisdom.
Yeah, okay. Romney won last night. So it was a pretty impressive victory, 12 points in Illinois. Let me ask you this. Put it this way, because we've been going this back and forth. Is Romney inevitable? Is there a denial from conservatives that Mitt Romney is going to be the nominee?
Yeah, I think in Washington the realization sunk in a while ago, and while not enthusiastic, I think most conservatives here think he's probably the best bet to beat Obama. The problem is that, the fact is that conservatives in Washington no longer control the Republican Party. The grassroots do, or maybe nobody does, but nobody can control Republican primary voters, at least in the way they used to. So, people may make that calculation, but a lot of primary voters don't like Mitt Romney. So we look at this and say, well, he's sewn it up, but that doesn't mean that voters in the next 5 primary states are going to obey. They may continue. I think they probably will continue to give sizable minorities to Santorum, and this thing could keep going. I mean, into the summer, definitely.
Yeah, it's also, though, a little unfair to Romney. A lot of voters like him. I mean, he still has, 2-1?
Absolutely. I mean, there are people who like him, I'm sure, or don't have anything against him, or think he'll be, able to beat the president in the fall, maybe. I mean, yeah, he's not a monster or anything. It's just that he hasn't made the case with Tea Party voters, and that's the problem.
I'm sort of growing of the opinion that it's time for Gingrich and maybe Ron Paul to get out. I mean, what purpose do they serve? Other than to keep if you are one of those people who decide that you can't vote for Romney, all they do is split up the non-Rom vote, and there's no pathway to victory. They're sort of just being obstructionists at this point, aren't they?
Well, sure.
Am I right about that, or am I wrong?
No, I mean, it gives Newt an opportunity to be mean to people on stage, which is by far his most polished talent and probably true love. He's really good at it. He enjoys doing it. He's, by the way, fun to watch when he does it.
It is entertaining, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, he's in because he's enjoying it. I personally think, on some basis of some evidence, things I've heard, that he is looking for a way out. He's been in this a long time. He's been doing this for years.
Give us more on that. What do you think? What are you hearing? Give me as much as you can on that.
I have heard that Newt understands that the jig is up and it's time to get out, and he's looking for a graceful way to do that. I was on the set last night at Fox during a Newt interview, and I got to say, he looked like a man who'd come to terms with reality. I mean, he was mouthing, all the platitudes you would expect. We're going to take this, to the next primary states, et cetera, et cetera. But again, he's been in electoral politics for many decades, since before I was born, and I'm 43. So I think he understands that it's diminishing returns at this point.
All right, so, we can go back and forth on whether or not, if somebody who supports Newt Gingrich, where those votes would go. Would they go to Romney? Would they go to Santorum? But at the end of the day, I think Republicans are going to vote for the Republican. But what about Ron Paul supporters? Do you think Ron Paul supporters will vote for Mitt Romney if he is the nominee?
No, I don't.
Where are they going to go then?
First of all, I think some Ron Paul supporters are probably not Republicans or conservatives in the first place. He's grown the Libertarian Coalition to include a lot of anti-war liberals.
Right.
But there are a lot of conservatives who like Ron Paul, kind of traditional conservatives, small government people, restrained foreign policy people. And I don't think they have any reason to vote Republican. They're not loyal to the party. They have nothing in common with Mitt Romney. I think they're probably going to vote for Gary Johnson, who's trying to be the Libertarian nominee, and I think will become it. And I think if Ron Paul helps Gary Johnson with fundraising, Gary Johnson could get a few points in the general election, and I think that would ensure Barack Obama becomes president again. I think this is a looming threat. In fact, I think it's close to a crisis. And because Republicans are disorganized and dumb, they haven't addressed it. But I think they need to right now.
Is it
Gary Johnson could wreck it for them.
All right. If Ron Paul actually goes and raises money for Gary Johnson, but that's a big if. I mean, would Ron Paul do that?
Well, he doesn't necessarily need to raise money for him. He could give him his fundraising lists. He could endorse him.
Well, if he endorses him, that's a big deal. I mean, if Ron Paul endorses...
keep in mind, Ron Paul did not endorse John McCain in 2008. He endorsed the Constitution Party candidate. He also had his own convention in August in Minneapolis of that year. And so it's not like Ron Paul has a history of loyalty to the Republican Party. He himself ran as a Libertarian candidate in 1988. So it's not foregone that he's going to support, loyally the Republican nominee at all. And this is a real problem potentially, and again, Republicans ought to think about how they want to deal with this, because a vigorous or even semi-vigorous third-party Libertarian run could sink the Republican mathematically.
We had a moment earlier today where we played a little bit of sound from the Secretary of Energy, and Stephen Chu says that he would give himself an A for his efforts at trying to keep the cost of gasoline low. So, Tucker, pull out your grade book. What grade would you give the Secretary of Energy?
Well, first of all, of course, he would give himself an A. Like all Americans give themselves A's. This is a very high self-esteem country, which I would say is maybe our number one challenge going forward, is we have too much self-esteem. No one ever gives himself a C. I'm sure in China nobody's giving himself an A.
Well, but I said the safe political answer was to say it was a B. Yeah, we're doing good, but we could always do better. I mean, you would think it would come from a politician.
Say, look, if I were him, I would say I would give myself a C+. I'm trying, but it's not working. I mean, that's the more honest answer. I would say, these guys come out of an intellectual tradition that believes in, and explicitly believes in, high energy prices because they think those will discourage carbon use and emissions. And so, they haven't done anything to lower the price of gasoline other than blame, quote, speculators, in other words, the market itself, and talk about opening up the strategic petroleum reserves. Those are not answers. But there are no short-term answers other than try to reduce instability in the Middle East. That's the real answer. But they can't say that or act on it. So, I think that's a ludicrous grade to give yourself an A.
On that point of no short-term answers, that's right. But if you started on some of the answers back when you first came into office, some of those short-term answers, would have kicked in by now. Some of the longer-term.
Well, they might be bearing fruit at this point.
Right,
that's
absolutely,
right. And that's absolutely right. Algae is not, that's a faith-based solution. It's incomplete or unclear signals on Iran. I mean, anybody who invests in petroleum futures can tell you that is, that's the issue right there.
All right, Tucker Carlson, always a pleasure to have you, my friend.
Thank you, gentlemen.
See you, Tucker.